I once pulled a 37-hour sprint under flickering fluorescence just to stop a product rollback from nuking half our customer base. Ate stale pretzels for dinner and napped under my desk with one AirPod in, because if an alert triggered, I had 50 minutes before our SLA fines kicked in. That's how Arcadia Logic was built. Not in flashy pitch decks or glossy swag bags, but in sweat, duct tape, and a team that gave a damn. And in those days, I wasn't Susan, head of ops. I was Susan, who set up the Slack instance, cleaned the whiteboards, and still had the keys to our original office, which was really just a converted dentist's waiting room next to a vape shop. We didn't have departments back then, just zones of chaos. My zone was everything between the code and the money. If a client screamed, I answered. If a metric tanked, I found the plug. I handled the budgets, the burn rates, the churn models. Once even ran QA when our lead dev got mono. I was the fix-it woman, the adult in the room when everyone else was arguing over Jira tickets and artisanal ramen. People think the early days are exciting. They're not. They're loud, broke, and smell like anxiety. But I loved it. Every painful, beautiful, underfunded second of it. So yeah, when folks ask me why I didn't just leave after Mark showed up, it's because I built the damn ship. Don't jump off your own hull just because a slick-talking parasite shows up with a LinkedIn banner and a six-pack of vision. Oh, and hey, if you're enjoying this, don't forget to tap that like button and maybe even hit subscribe. I mean, come on, 90% of you are freeloading your way through this chaos, and the team could really use the motivation. Especially since we're about to walk into a corporate horror show dressed like a black tie gala. Anyway, where were we? Right, Mark, he came in after Series C. Fresh off scaling a crypto-adjacent app that nobody actually used but somehow landed a TechCrunch headline. I should have known. His handshake was soft, his shoes were louder than his resume, and within a week he had renamed our roadmap to the Moonshot Engine. Actual words, Moonshot, Engine. At first I gave him a shot. Everyone deserves onboarding, but his flavor of leadership was buzzword salad with a side of I'll circle back. He loved the spotlight but couldn't read a P&L without whispering to his EA. He started doing reorg check-ins where he'd host 15-minute meetings to say nothing except we're leveling up our culture stack. What does that even mean? Meanwhile, the team that had been holding this place together, slowly, methodically, he started gutting them. Our head of support gone. No goodbye. Just a locked Slack account and a vague HR email. One of our earliest engineers, suddenly on leave. Mark replaced her with someone from his last company, a guy who once accidentally deleted our staging environment. Twice. But here's the thing. Mark didn't just cut people. He rewrote history. Projects that had been greenlit under my watch magically became Mark's initiatives. Investors started quoting his decks I built while he was off vlogging with a ring light in his office. I remember the day I realized something was off. We were in a budget planning session and I noticed I wasn't on the invite. Weird, I always led budget, I showed up anyway. Mark looked at me half-smile and said, "Oh Susan, we're streamlining these touch points. Touch points? That was his code for you're out." I stayed quiet, I watched. And I started noticing patterns. My calendar was thinning out. Docs I created were suddenly restricted. I'd see files I authored, but they were owned by new leads. Leads who couldn't explain a margin curve if it hit them in the face. Still, I played along. I acted like the good soldier. I even joined his stupid Slack channel called #MissionMars. I posted emojis, sent clapping gifs. But behind the scenes, I started my own little mission. Not to Mars, to survival. I copied every file I had access to, screenshotted calendar invites, kept receipts, dug up the dusty shareholder docs we'd stashed after Series A. And that's when I found the first thread in the sweater, a proxy clause tied to the founder's shares. Dormant, unused, but still legally binding. The kind of thing people forget until they don't. I didn't know what the end game was yet, but I knew one thing: Mark was moving fast. Faster than someone with nothing to hide. And me? I don't move fast, I move right. 3 weeks after Mark's latest vision sync, I opened my laptop Monday morning and found an empty calendar. Not blank, wiped. No stand-ups, no strategy reviews, no budget check-ins, not even the recurring weekly I had with the board liaison. I refreshed, logged out, back in, thought maybe the system had hiccuped. But no, my digital life had been vacuumed clean like it never existed. At first, I gaslit myself, told myself maybe there was a system migration. Maybe Mark's assistant screwed up the shared access. Maybe something innocuous. But deep down, I felt it, the kind of gut chill you only get when the trap's already snapped and you're just standing there blinking at the teeth. Then came the badge. I got into the building, past the lobby turnstiles, but when I got to the elevator access, denied. Red light. No beep, tried again and again, like some desperate idiot waving her identity at a wall that didn't want her anymore. The security guy, Paul, sweet guy, always brought in leftover donuts on Fridays, gave me an apologetic shrug. Probably a glitch, he said. Go check with IT, so I did. And what did I get? A ticket number and a glazed-over tech who didn't even make eye contact. He scrolled for a minute, then mumbled, "Yeah, your badge permissions were modified. Probably intentional. We'll have to talk to Mark." That was the first time someone actually said his name in reference to my erasure. Talk to Mark. Like I was supposed to march into his office, barefoot and pregnant with my own relevance, and beg to know whether I still had a chair at the table I built. I went back to my desk, well, my area. Half my files were gone. Google Drive showed ownership transfers. Confluence pages were locked. Our internal KPI dashboard had me removed as an editor. My Slack role had been changed from team lead to individual contributor. I didn't cry. I cataloged. I went analog, started a handwritten ledger. File names, changes, owners, timestamps, screenshots, external backups. I'd already backed up most of the strategic ops docs to a personal encrypted drive months ago when Mark first started playing musical chairs with leadership titles. The official company org chart still listed me as head of ops, but my shadow was being erased pixel by pixel. That afternoon, a junior dev, I'll call him Aiden, came by my desk pretending to ask about sprint timelines. Real soft-spoken kid, good instincts. As he leaned over my screen, he whispered, "You didn't hear it from me, but there's a doc floating around. Called New Leadership Restructure Q4 Draft. You're not on it." I didn't blink, didn't flinch, just nodded and said, "Thanks. You need anything else for the sprint?" He walked away like nothing happened. Meanwhile, I started digging. Buried in our shared drive were investor updates, some of which I hadn't been looped into. Mark had been sending flashy updates to Raymond and the rest of the Series C syndicate, painting a story that spun my work as his. Charts I built were stripped of watermarks. My revenue pacing model had been repackaged as a proprietary forecasting algorithm. The gall was so brazen, it was almost stupid. But then again, that's Mark's superpower, confidence unmoored from competence. I pulled up the original founder agreement from when we incorporated. I remembered the clause vaguely, something about dormant shares and transfer conditions if the founder ever left without exercising his full vest, which he did, 2 years ago. Quiet exit. Burned out, left me a bottle of scotch and a handwritten post-it note that said, "Keep this thing alive." Back then I thought it was sentiment. Now it felt like a premonition. I found the clause. 10.4b. Proxy transfer rights in the event of founder disengagement. Legally binding, not yet executed but assignable with notarized approval, which I had. Because 6 months ago, before Mark arrived, the founder emailed me a scanned proxy form. Just in case, he wrote. I printed it, notarized it at the UPS on 6th Street and stuck it in my personal folder. Didn't think I'd ever need it. Now I tucked it into my briefcase like a dagger. That week I stopped attending meetings and started listening. To hallway whispers, to Slack threads, to body language. I wasn't a part of the new Arcadia logic anymore, not officially. I was a ghost in her own house. But ghosts know all the secret passageways. I started drafting a file, titled Contingency Internal. It wasn't revenge, not yet, it was protection, insurance, but I knew. Mark wasn't just pushing me out. He was preparing to burn the house down and build a mirror version without the woman who'd poured the foundation. 2 weeks before the gala, I got a glossy invitation in my inbox like nothing had happened. Arcadia Logic Presents, Elevate, a celebration of innovation and growth. Black tie. Investor showcase. Press attendance confirmed. And there it was, right under the executive leadership team section. Susan NG, head of strategic operations. I stared at it for a good 10 minutes, sipping lukewarm coffee like it might turn into wine if I waited long enough. My badge still didn't work. My calendar was still barren. Mark hadn't spoken to me since his last performative town hall, where he used the word synergy so many times I almost passed out. Yet here I was, still printed in Helvetica New, like my erasure hadn't already begun. So I made a choice. I RSVP'd yes. The venue was an upscale glass-walled monstrosity in the Arts District. Edison bulbs everywhere, hors d'oeuvres served on slabs of reclaimed wood. A string quartet playing Coldplay like it was Chopin. Everyone had that fake smile glow you see in Instagram posts before the divorce. I wore black, not just because it's slimming, but because it matched the tone of the evening funeral chic. Heels, yes, but flats tucked in my bag. I'm not an amateur. I arrived 15 minutes early naturally. Early is power. Late is for people trying to make an entrance. I didn't need an entrance. I was the infrastructure. The seating chart was projected on a digital screen like some futuristic Hunger Games. Table 3, Susan NG, Mark Halston, Raymond Cho, and 2 investment partners from Cypress Creek Capital. Raymond Cho, the man who personally led our $50 million Series C raise, a guy with the demeanor of a Buddhist monk but the kill switch of a Wall Street wolf. Quiet, efficient, allergic to bullshit. Now he was seated with me. I made a mental note. No way in hell that was random. I walked to table 3 like I belonged there because technically on paper I still did. Mark hadn't sent a termination letter. HR hadn't processed a title change. And until someone handed me a cocktail napkin that said, "You're fired," I was still head of strategic ops, damn it. Mark arrived last, of course, wearing a suit that probably cost more than my first car and a smile curated for magazine covers. He air-kissed one of the Cypress Creek partners, fist-bumped the other, and gave me a nod so shallow I needed a shovel to find the meaning. Smiled right back, big, bright, empty. He gave his usual performative speech over tuna tartare. Arcadia is reaching escape velocity, preparing for strategic alignment, blah, blah, blah. He even used the phrase disruption mindset and didn't spontaneously combust. Disappointing. Throughout the dinner I played the part, asked the right questions, laughed at the safe jokes, complimented the wine pairings, never let my posture dip or my expression falter. Raymond, though he watched, he didn't talk much, didn't interrupt, but he noticed everything. My silence marks overcompensation. The subtle shift when I mentioned, in passing, it's always surreal watching someone announce plans they didn't actually design. His eyes flicked to me like a sonar ping. I turned to the stage. The MC was warming up the room with investor shoutouts and canned hype. A countdown timer glowed faintly on the floor behind him. 10 minutes until Mark's major announcement. I'd seen the preview deck, flashed on Slack 2 days prior before I was booted again. He was going to announce a planned merger with a mid-tier AI firm in Seattle, complete with bloated projections and a shared value slide that looked like a BuzzFeed quiz. The room buzzed with chatter. Someone from TechCrunch was live tweeting appetizers. A micro-influencer in a pink blazer live-streamed from the back row, probably hoping to snag a founder glow-up reel. Me, I was watching Raymond's face, and he wasn't smiling. His hand tapped rhythmically on the tablecloth just once, and then again, almost like Morse code. Then during dessert, a deconstructed tiramisu that looked like a failed science experiment, my phone buzzed on the table. I glanced at the screen. A message from an unknown number, but the preview line was all I needed. Consider your access revoked. No subject. No punctuation, just surgical cruelty. I didn't move, didn't gasp, didn't give Mark the satisfaction. I tapped the message open. The number was Mark's, just unlisted in his usual contacts. He wanted me to know, but also to not know. I placed the phone down, turned it toward Raymond. He read it. His jaw didn't tighten. His breath didn't change. But his pupils dilated like a predator clocking movement in the tall grass. He leaned in slightly. "You have everything?" I nodded just once. And then the tiniest smirk twitched at the corner of his mouth. Not joy, not surprise, confirmation. Something shifted in the air like the moment before a thunderclap. Across the room, Mark was walking toward the side stage entrance, mic in hand, ready to bask in his artificial legacy. Raymond stood up. I didn't know what he was about to do, but I knew I wasn't alone anymore. The room dimmed as the MC tapped the mic, his voice echoing just slightly too loud through the boutique sound system. "Ladies and gentlemen, please turn your attention to the stage for a few words from Arcadia, Logic's fearless leader." Mark emerged from behind a velvet curtain like he was stepping onto a Broadway stage, not a platform built on 5 years of other people's work. The spotlight caught the shine of his gelled hair, his perfect teeth. The custom suit probably steamed 5 minutes before go time by some poor intern. He waved like he was greeting old friends, not future casualties. At my table, I sipped my water. Across from me, Raymond Cho placed his napkin slowly beside his plate and gave Mark a look I couldn't quite place, something between disinterest and diagnostic focus. A surgeon sizing up a tumor he already planned to remove. Mark began speaking in his usual keynote rhythm, every sentence ending in a crescendo, every pause calculated for applause he wouldn't get. When I joined Arcadia Logic, he began, I saw not just a company, I saw a movement. Cue the slide, a hero image of Arcadia's logo floating above clouds, as if heaven itself had given us permission to innovate. I felt my phone vibrate. It was face up on the table, half beneath my hand. The name didn't display, just the number unfamiliar. No emoji, no contact photo, just the digits and a preview of the message. "Consider your access revoked." I didn't react, didn't flinch. I just stared at it like I was reading an update about a storm halfway across the world. My heart didn't race, not right away, it slowed. Because that's what real betrayal feels like. Not shock, not even anger. Just that sinking, final realization that someone isn't just stepping over you. They're pretending you were never there at all. No signature, no explanation, no context. Just a sentence dropped like a guillotine. I opened the message. It was real, time-stamped, sent 2 minutes ago. While Mark stood 20 feet away pretending to be a visionary, he texted the woman who built his runway and told her to go home like a temp with the wrong badge. Still smiling, I slowly turned the phone around and slid it toward Raymond. He looked down. Read it once, didn't blink. Then he looked up. His expression shifted, not in volume, but in density. Something compacted behind his eyes, like steel being forged in a space no one else could see. He leaned toward me, voice low, deliberate. "Do you have everything?" I nodded once. I didn't say, "What do you mean?" I didn't ask, "Everything like what?" Because we both knew exactly what he meant. Backups, screenshots, clause 10.4b, internal memos, performance audit spreadsheet Mark thought he buried. The proxy document with the original founder's signature, notarized and time-stamped. The receipts, the keys, I had everything. Raymond nodded subtly, then looked back at the stage, his jaw setting like stone. On stage, Mark was still talking. "In Q4, we'll be partnering with Novagenics AI to transform the way data serves humanity." A few people clapped. Most just watched. Cameras flashed. Wine glasses clinked. I sat back in my chair, the fabric of my dress pressing cool against my skin, and let myself breathe again. Not relief, not yet, but something else, something older and colder than rage. A sense of justice long denied but suddenly approaching like a train in the distance. Mark kept going, unaware. Our merger will usher in a new era. One where Arcadia Logic steps into the future, unencumbered by outdated systems, unencumbered. I almost laughed. Was his little farewell, wasn't it? I wasn't just removed, I was outdated. He wanted to make sure I saw it before the lights dimmed and the cameras rolled. But he forgot the one rule of replacing your architects mid-construction. If the foundation's still listening, she knows exactly which beam to kick. Raymond reached for his phone, tapped a quick message, then stood and walked toward the side of the stage, whispering something to the MC. A flick of eyebrows, a pause, a nod. The MC glanced down at the floor timer, then into the crowd. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, clearing his throat, "we're going to pause briefly. There's been a slight change of plans." Mark turned, confused, and I sat there, silent, steady, and still wearing the title he'd tried to delete. Raymond didn't rush. He didn't puff his chest or throw elbows. He stood like he was simply stretching his legs, a polite exit between courses, maybe to check a message or find the restroom. But I watched every movement like a hawk watching another hawk. Every step was controlled, calm, choreographed, not the gait of a man leaving a gala, but the approach of a man about to detonate something carefully hidden beneath the floorboards. He made his way around the far edge of the dining hall, past tables full of investors in rented tuxedos and overpriced watches. Nobody paid attention. Why would they? Just another money guy with a silent phone call to take. He reached the MC, leaned in, spoke exactly 3 seconds. The MC, mid-sip from his water glass, blinked like he'd just been told his house was on fire, but to announce it with charm. He stepped toward the mic, tapped it. The room hushed immediately. You could hear the hum of the LED panels above us, the soft scrape of a fork being laid down a few tables over. 1 second we were at a corporate cotillion, next second it felt like an airlock had been breached. The MC cleared his throat. "Ladies and gentlemen, a slight change of plans tonight." Pause, a dozen heads tilted. "We're now auctioning a majority stake in Arcadia Logic." Silence, not stunned silence, held breath silence. People looked at one another like they'd misheard. Like maybe this was some kind of quirky metaphor. A joke, perhaps, part of the presentation. It wasn't. My pulse roared in my ears like it was trying to escape my body. But outwardly, I didn't twitch. Not even a blink. Just sat there with my hands folded on my lap like I'd been told nothing more shocking than a menu change. 2 tables over, a venture partner dropped his wine glass. It didn't shatter, just rolled onto the tablecloth with a dull thud. A woman from Series B looked at her phone like maybe this had hit Twitter before it hit her ears. And then Mark exploded out from backstage like a malfunctioning automaton. His mic was still on, and the tail end of some self-congratulatory statement echoed from the speakers, "Are proud to lead the future of." He looked wild. Not messy, he was still polished. But it was that desperate kind of polish. The slick back hair was suddenly too slick. The grin too forced. The steps too fast to be casual. He charged the MC like someone had just insulted his stock portfolio, whisper shouting in a way everyone could hear anyway. "What the hell are you talking about?" The MC shrugged, Raymond's direction. A ripple went through the crowd like someone had dropped a match into dry leaves. Raymond reappeared, not hurrying, not smug, just present. He wasn't performing. That's what made it terrifying. He just stood there, hands in his pockets, or of a man who didn't need to raise his voice because the paperwork had already been signed. Mark's smile twisted like it didn't fit his face anymore. "This isn't official," he barked. "There's a process. We don't just auction ownership at dinner." Raymond finally spoke calmly. "No, you don't, but you're not the majority stakeholder anymore." Every syllable landed like a nail being driven through lacquered wood. You could hear someone gasp behind me. Investors leaned in. Whispering, I stayed still, motionless. But beneath the calm, my heart rattled against my ribs like it was trying to beat its way out. I felt the weight of every contingency plan I'd drafted, every email I'd backed up, every file, clause, and timestamp I'd archived. This wasn't just a twist of fate, it was the moment the scale tipped after years of quiet wait. Mark's eyes scanned the room for allies. He found none. Not at table 2, where the board chair had gone pale. Not at table 6, where the legal counsel for Cypress Creek had already pulled out his phone. And definitely not at my table, where I sat quietly, still smiling that corporate smile that means absolutely nothing and everything at once. Mark opened his mouth again, but Raymond held up a hand, not as a threat, but as a signal, like a referee, like a judge, like someone who already knows the verdict. "Sit down, Mark," he said softly. "You're about to make this worse for yourself." And for the first time all evening, Mark did something smart. He sat, but he didn't look at me. Couldn't, because deep down he knew this wasn't chaos. It was the execution of a plan. And I'd started writing it the moment my badge stopped working. 6 months before the gala, before Mark's whiteboard jargon and hallway purges, before the title changes that never got announced but somehow appeared in email footers, I got lunch with Ali, Arcadia's original founder. We met at a diner with cracked booths and too many ceiling fans, the kind of place where every plate smells like bacon, even if you order pancakes. He looked tired, not just startup tired, done tired. The kind of tired that's deeper than sleeplessness. Bone settled, exit tired. He didn't even bring a laptop. Just a manila envelope, slightly bent in one corner. When I slid into the booth across from him, he pushed it toward me like he was handing over something cursed. "I never used M," he said. "Didn't want to. But if things ever get weird, I trust you to know what to do." Inside the envelope were 2 documents. The first, a signed, notarized proxy assignment. Irrevocable voting rights for his founder shares, still unvested, but still active in the cap table. 8.7% of the company. Enough to tip a vote if the vote was close. Second, a page from the original shareholder agreement I hadn't looked at in years. Clause 14.2. In the event of a material misuse of executive authority without board approval, including but not limited to unauthorized changes to leadership structure, equity allocations, or performance reporting, a forced equity reassessment shall be triggered. It was a clause no one ever expected to invoke. Like a panic button in a submarine, written back when we were idealistic idiots who thought we'd scale forever and trust would hold. I folded the documents carefully and slid them into my leather folio. "You sure?" I asked. He nodded, pouring syrup onto his eggs like a man with nothing left to fear. "You're the only one who knows what this company actually is," he said. "Just don't wait too long. When the rot starts, it spreads fast." I didn't touch the documents after that. Not because I forgot, because you don't move your queen just to make a point. I watched, I waited, and I let Mark dig his own grave. His first misstep was removing me from budget planning without a board vote. Second, sending falsified growth projections to investors, ones I had internal models to dispute, timestamped, and archived. Third, quietly greenlighting layoffs disguised as team realignments, none of which went through proper governance channels. By the time he sent that little text, "Consider your access revoked," he'd already tripped every wire I'd set without ever knowing they were there. And now, back in that ballroom filled with money and cameras and overpriced ego, the fuse I'd been nursing for months had just hit the charge. Raymond had known about the proxy. Of course he had. 2 weeks prior, I'd sent him a confidential briefing, one line in a sea of attachments. I hold irrevocable proxy rights for 8.7% of the founding shares. Executed, notarized, and file-stamped. If needed, I'm prepared to initiate Clause 14.2. He didn't reply in writing, not his style. But 2 days later, his office requested an informal review of executive authority structures from legal. One of his partners accidentally CC'd me on an email thread about Arcadia's leadership integrity review. 12 moves ahead. That's the only way to play this game. Because here's the truth no one wants to admit about boardrooms and founders and the golden goose chaos of tech startups. No one reads the old rules until someone tries to break them. And I never forgot the rules. I knew the founder's intent, knew how this company was meant to function. I had been the keeper of that DNA when everyone else chased valuation cliffs and pitch deck dopamine. Clause 14.2 wasn't just a line in a dusty document. It was a scalpel. Precise, clinical, final. And all Mark had to do was get cocky enough to give me the clean legal moment, which he did. Repeatedly. Every time he bypassed the board, every time he reassigned a role without quorum, every time he retrofitted a lie into a press release. He was teeing up the very clause that now hung over his career like a guillotine on a timer. So when Raymond stood in that ballroom, flanked by lawyers and silent shareholders, he wasn't bluffing. And I wasn't surprised. I sat there, sipping my wine, hands folded neatly, not because I was calm, but because this was the moment we'd been planning for months. Mark thought I was playing checkers, but this wasn't a game. It was a checkmate written in ink 6 months ago, under cheap diner lights, over a plate of eggs that smelled like surrender. The spiral didn't start with shouting or spectacle. It started with a whisper, a subtle shift in atmosphere, like someone had cracked a window in a room full of smoke, and now the truth was curling in through the drafts. The MC never returned to the stage. Mark paced behind it like a trapped animal in a tailored cage, whispering frantically to his assistant, who looked one bad sentence away from a breakdown. His mic had been cut. His slides frozen on screen, slide 14 of 32, our vision for strategic autonomy. Meanwhile, Raymond nodded once to a man in a dark suit seated near the emergency exit. The man rose, left the room, and returned moments later with Arcadia Logic's general counsel in tow, Michelle Park, a woman whose resting expression could stop a freight train. She didn't even look at Mark. Just walked straight to Raymond, took the folder he handed her and began flipping through it like she was reading a menu. Mark noticed. Of course he did. He stormed over, low-voiced but sharp. "Michelle, what the hell is this?" She didn't look up. "It's a preliminary review. You'll want to be quiet now." Board members began shifting in their seats, not panicking, moving, phones out. Private Slack DMs firing. One man from table 5 stepped into the hallway. 2 women at table 1 leaned into each other, murmuring with furrowed brows. The CFO, usually glued to his glass of bourbon, suddenly looked sober. Mark pivoted. He tried to smile, like a magician caught halfway through a bad trick, desperate to regain the room. "None of this is binding," he said, loud enough for the front half of the room to hear. "There's protocol, votes. These are preliminary conversations." He emphasized that last phrase like a lifeline, like if he said it enough times it would become true. That's when Raymond stepped forward and opened the folder. My folder, black leather, gold clasp. Inside, tabs, printouts, emails, flagged documents, timestamped screenshots. Exhibits A through M, unauthorized role changes. Slack messages from Mark instructing team leads to clean up performance data ahead of the Series C deck. Spreadsheets showing mismatched revenue projections between internal and investor-facing reports. Email chain where Mark had unilaterally approved bonus reallocations from laid-off employees' equity pools without informing the board. All neat, all highlighted. Raymond didn't say anything, just held the open folder toward Michelle. She took it, pulled one page out, and read it. The silence in the room turned brittle. Mark's mouth opened. Nothing came out. His eyes darted, looking for anyone to back him up. No one moved. I lifted my wine glass. Didn't rush, didn't gloat. Just brought it to my lips and took a small, deliberate sip. And then I said it. Calm, precise, like reading a weather report. Clause 14.2, Mark. He turned toward me, face drawn, pale. Read it slowly. He blinked. Susan, this isn't. Read it slowly. Michelle handed him the page. He took it like it might bite. I watched him scan it. Watched the muscles in his jaw tighten. His lips moved as he read silently. Words he never thought anyone would remember. In the event of a material misuse of executive authority without board approval, including but not limited to unauthorized changes to leadership structure, equity allocations, or performance reporting, the clause continued. But he stopped there, because it was enough. The cameras weren't on, but every eye in the room was. And Mark Halston, self-styled savior of Arcadia logic, didn't have a single chess piece left. Raymond cleared his throat. Based on the documentation provided, and per provisions of the shareholder agreement, specifically Clause 14.2, we are convening an emergency board session. Mark looked at him, then at me, then at the folder. Raymond, you're making a mistake. Raymond didn't blink. No, I'm correcting one. Mark turned toward me one last time, but I was already looking past him, because this wasn't about him anymore. This was about every woman who ever built something just to watch a louder man take credit. This was about legacy. And the truth? It had always been waiting, quietly, like a file in a locked drawer, until someone was dumb enough to hand me the key. The side room wasn't anything special, just a private dining area repurposed for crises. Faux mahogany table, frosted glass door. One of those little conference speakerphones in the center that never really works. A tray of untouched pastries sat in the corner like leftovers from a meeting that no longer mattered. They were already seated when I entered. The full board, Raymond, Michelle, 2 investor reps, one visibly sweating COO who looked like he wanted to be anywhere else. Mark sat near the end, shoulders square, hands folded tight enough to crack bone. I didn't acknowledge him. Didn't need to. I walked to the far end of the table, placed my laptop in front of me, and opened it with the same care I used to draft our first go-to-market strategy 5 years ago. Calm, focused, not here for revenge, here for the reset. Raymond gestured once and the door clicked shut behind me. Miss NG, Michelle said, voice even. The board is prepared to hear your findings. I connected my laptop to the screen. The projector blinked to life. Slide 1, operational irregularities and governance failures. Q2Q for no branding. No animations, just facts in 11-point font. I'll be brief, I said, and I was. I presented a timeline, emails, Slack messages, edited metrics between investor and internal decks, bonus reallocations that violated the compensation charter, a pattern of executive actions made without board knowledge, designed to inflate short-term optics at the expense of long-term integrity. Slide 6, suppression of internal complaints. I received 4 messages in the last 6 weeks from staff flagged for realignment, I said, scrolling through anonymized excerpts. All shared a common pattern: pressure to hit impossible KPIs, suggestions to get on board or get out, and threats of retaliation. Mark tried to speak. You're Mr. Halston, Michelle interrupted. You'll be given an opportunity after the presentation. He fell silent, but not before glancing at Raymond, whose face was unreadable. Slide 9, violation of Clause 14.2. I displayed the exact line. Highlighted. Next to it, each corresponding incident, timestamped and linked. No commentary, no hyperbole, just receipts. When I finished, I closed the laptop, placed my hands on the table, and looked each board member in the eye. The actions outlined not only breached protocol, but placed this company and your investments at risk, I said, tone steady. Tonight's disruption wasn't my doing. It was the unavoidable result of inaction. Michelle leaned forward. Motion 1, suspension of Mark Halston, CEO, pending formal investigation into executive misconduct. She looked around the table. All in favor? 7 hands rose, no hesitation. Mark didn't move. He stared ahead, jaw locked, as if refusing to blink would turn the room back into his. It's not. This isn't how things are done, he muttered. Raymond didn't even look at him. Motion 2, Michelle continued, per the voting rights held by Miss NG and the proxy shares of the founder, as well as investor alignment through Cypress Creek Capital, we propose a shift in controlling interest. She paused. To be held by Mr. Raymond Cho's group, with operational management delegated to Susan NG, effective immediately. This time, Mark did try to interrupt. Can't just hand her the company. Michelle calmly replied, it's not being handed, it's being returned. The vote was unanimous. No speeches, no applause, just recorded decisions, signed documents, and a silent storm finally given structure. I didn't smile, didn't lean back, just closed the laptop, nodded once, and stood. No one followed me out. They stayed behind, murmuring logistics, assigning compliance audits, setting up interim reporting structures. Kind of tedious, necessary architecture that rebuilds companies when the branding falls apart. Outside the side room, the gala continued. Softer now, less frantic, a polite hum of forks and murmurs, unaware that the roof had been ripped off and rebuilt in the time it took to eat a slice of beet tartare. I paused before stepping back in. Checked my reflection in the glass, hair intact, eyes sharp, still Susan. but no longer the ghost in someone else's story. Now the architect again, not of vengeance, of repair. The lights hadn't dimmed when I returned to the ballroom, they just softened like the room itself knew something fundamental had shifted. The violinist had picked up again, this time with something quieter, slower, like a postscript in string form. Waitstaff circulated with espresso mousse in tiny glass jars, smiling like nothing had happened. And maybe for most people in that room, nothing had yet. Mark was gone. Not escorted, not shamed, just absent. His mic badge lay face down on table 3 next to a half-empty glass of water. Someone had already cleared his in tray. The MC returned to the stage, brow slightly furrowed like a man who'd just been handed a cue card soaked in gasoline. He tapped the mic once. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, voice tight but composed, "thank you for your patience. I'd like to resume this evening's program with an update to Arcadia Logic's leadership." Some forks clinked down. The woman from TechCrunch sat up straighter. The MC took a breath, then continued. "Please welcome our new managing partner, Susan NG." There was no applause, not out of protest, but reverence. The kind that seeps in when people realize they were watching the wrong movie the entire time. I stood, walked to the stage in the same heels I'd worn when I first pitched our product to Raymond's Fund 3 years ago. Same spine, same breath. Only now no more shadows, no more borrowed titles. The click of my heels across the floor felt louder than the music. I stepped up to the mic, adjusted it once, not because it needed it, but because it signaled control. I looked out over the crowd. Some faces were familiar, some had changed, some had bet against me. Most just never noticed me. Until now, I didn't clear my throat, didn't thank anyone. I just said, this company was built on integrity. Pause, and tonight we honor that. I let the silence breathe. Then I clicked the remote in my hand, one slide illuminated the screen behind me. A reinvestment in the Arcadia team, I continued. Effective immediately. You're reinstating the equity pools for the 43 employees marked for realignment under the previous administration. Your shares are safe. Your work is valued. And your future here is yours to shape. Now there was applause, not polite, not forced. Real. From developers and analysts and quiet operators who'd sat through Mark's nonsense in silence. From people who'd watched their effort be repackaged, their voices erased, their chairs made colder by the hour. Ended it there, didn't run out the clock, no monologue, no mission vision statement, just stepped back from the mic and nodded to the MC. On my way offstage, I passed Raymond. He didn't say anything, just gave me the smallest nod. The kind reserved for equals, co-architects. As I returned to my table, the air had shifted again. It wasn't louder, it was sharper. People were recalibrating, quietly panicking or quietly celebrating, depending on how well they'd read the game. And then, from a nearby table, just audible enough to reach me, an investor I didn't recognize leaned to his colleague and said, half whisper, half wonder, "So she was always the real founder, wasn't she?" I didn't turn, didn't need to, because they were right. And I'd never left the board. I just waited for the right moment to remind them whose name was on the blueprint. Appreciate you sticking around, you legends of the break room. Subscribe for more chaos. Let's make your old managers spill their coffee in fear.